This crude tattoo partially covers a slave branding. The dagger is heavy and sharp, but lacks balance. This worm-like sigil has been drawn with his own blood. The wound is deep. A precise strike reached the heart. A blunt force trauma may have suffered an internal hemorrhage. The victim has clenched the fabric so firmly in his fist that it's nigh impossible to remove it. He died right here.
Oh, these crime scenes always outdo my imagination.
This elaborate box must be for the ritual dagger. The herbs here are Salvia divinorum. They have a slight hallucinogenic effect to emphasize the ceremony. The ointment smells mouse-like. I presume it is an aphrodisiac prepared from a Spanish fly. This oil has a slight aroma of flowers and olive. Werner, care to explain what is going on here?
On nights like these, it's not unusual for some attendees to get...
Mr. Manchos is the owner of the manor, yes?
And the host of court...
How did you discover the body? In between guzzles of alcohol?
I was set to perform in a fecundity rite with Fabio and came to inquire further.
Were you well acquainted with Fabio, the victim?
The
police remain unaware of this tragic event?
Some of them may be.
What about the fertility ritual? There was something about When you discovered the body, was the door open?
No, it was locked. Oh, that reminds me. It's a minor detail, but the first time I came to speak to Fabio, I left without entering, having been unable to open the door.
You didn't have the key?
No, I had it. Don't look at me like that. I was mostly sober. I suspect there was a key in the other side of the door, blocking the lock.
That detail may very well be major, Werner. Well done. So you returned later only to find the lock was not blocked?
Correct. After an hour had passed, I tried again and was able to unlock the door. That's when I discovered poor...
What about a quick pillow fight?
Enough cigars to burn down the entire mansion. Blood. A sturdy bottle. It didn't... An open wound spoiled the carpet. Why don't people tidy up after themselves? This is a different ritual.
How can anyone accept such behaviour?
A useful tool for a disguise arsenal. Identical to the robes the guests are wearing. Props, decorations, and tools for a more detailed set. Similar to the guests' robes, apart from the bloodstains. Handcrafted and luxurious cufflinks. There's also a note. For my Fabio, Manchos. The key is similar to the one that Vogel gave me.
Would you recognise me in one of these? I suppose not.
You've got a lot to do, Sherlock. You've got a lot to do, Sherlock.
A person leaned against the doorframe. They left a smudged trail of blood. A bloody handprint on an armchair. The wounded person was here for some time. There appear to be no further traces leading to the altar.
You've got a lot to do, Sherlock.
Props, decorations, and tools for a more detailed set. The pitcher is empty, but with puddles around it. Blood clots are adhered to the sides of the drain.
So, Sherry, do you have any ideas about the case?
Perhaps. I think I can deduce what happened here. The bottle was used as a weapon during a scuffle in the smoking lounge. Then, to ensure no one would interrupt, the murderer locked the door. The unconscious body of the victim was moved to the altar room. Once the body was on the altar, the murderer thrust the dagger into the victim's heart. Symbols were drawn with the blood. The wardrobe was used to hide the bloodied robe from anyone's eyes. The killer washed himself and took a clean robe from the hanger before leaving.
Are you all right? You're on the floor, not moving.
I think I know what happened here. I'm starting to put the pieces together.
Fabio was stabbed.
The murderer had to have access to this room. After the crime, he... Kurt Manchios, I presume. I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, you must be the one Werner told.
I need to find all those who had the key to the altar room. I'd like to speak to Mr. Pinchetti and Matista. Do you have somewhere I might have...
Freeze, filth. You're under arrest. Look at you. Committed a crime, and now I have to free you, kiss your hand and apologise for the inconvenience.
I did tell you that Mr. Vogel and I were innocent. I emphasized it in my statement.
Your statement? Thanks to some bigwigs who work for the so-called good of the country by releasing fleas like you. Thank God we have Vogel in his letter. Once I get to that goldfish, I'll...
Bigwig? Oh, my wretched brother Mycroft and his long nose.
Wait, did you say Mycroft? Mycroft Holmes? Are you the youngest son of Violet Holmes, rest her soul?
You knew my mother?
Not personally, no. Not exactly. I was working on the paperwork for that case.
Would you happen to remember anything of the events?
Well, I didn't make the inquiry, but I remember seeing some notes. Why?
Perhaps we can negotiate. I could be quite useful.
Huh. Got you hooked, right? You know what? Stark and the others think they're the smartest here, thanks to you.
I'm glad we managed to get the scoop before the raid. I can't go back to prison.
Back on track to solve the case.
Look, I found Werner.
Werner, are you all right?
Oh, yes, yes. Everything's fine. In fact...
I suppose that, in the pursuit of justice, that is absurd. I can resolve this without compromising.
I don't think I can tell you anything about this. I don't think I can tell you anything about this. I don't think I can tell you anything about this.
I can't follow you here. I have learned who told the police about the crime. It was Santos Pinchetti,
Do I know him?
the major domo of the manor. He cleans up after you.
Well, then he does his job perfectly. All but invisible. I couldn't tell you the first thing about him.
Have you considered Mr. Santos Pinchetti as a suspect?
The snitch? Have you seen him? I mean, my breath could knock him down. What's so special about him?
As a major domo, he has keys that open all the rooms, including the one to the crime scene. Could have testified only to circumvent suspicion, don't you think? We need to question him.
Right. I'll send our men to fetch him. Stay here. They brought him in, Mr. Holmes. Here's the key to interrogation room number 7. Mr. Pinchetti didn't even resist, our men said.
Thank you.
This area is restricted.
Good day, Mr. Manchios. I am Constable Oswald's partner in this investigation.
Be quick and gentle. Some of your colleagues are untrained.
Only an undercover agent can scour a ditch full of deviants. You are a little over the top with your use of makeup, Mr. Manchios. Is it so difficult for you to acknowledge your age?
Well, Sherlock, that's easy for you to say to an old man when you look as though you are barely 15.
But still, it shouldn't be an issue for someone of your status.
For people of my age, it isn't an issue, no. But the younger ones can be so afraid of wrinkles and grey flecks. I have to adapt.
Such a methodical man who cares for his body but misses the soap under his fingernails. Are you so impatient, or perhaps even impulsive?
I wouldn't call myself that. Silly little details. If I missed it, it wasn't important. Or rather, it was less important than who or what I was focused on.
What was Fabio like? His personality, his habits? Anything you can tell me?
He was the brightest star of my parties. Young, magnetic, and full of energy.
Mr. Vogel told me a little about your parties, but I would like to know... I'd like to know who you usually invite to your parties.
Free minds who are able to leave reality for an...
Why did you invite Mr. Vogel as your special guest?
He's a pretty fellow. He's capable of surprising the public. He has a... That's not something I know much about. I've no idea about that. That's not something I know much about.
You bought an expensive pair of cufflinks for Fabio. Were they his price? Or were they a tip for an exclusive show?
It was pure business. Fabio escorted me a few times. I was merely showing my gratitude.
This pair cost a small fortune. You must be extremely grateful, then. Tell me more.
You've thrust a knife in an exposed nerve, Sherlock. Yes, he was my protégé and my beacon. I've no idea about that. I've no idea about that. I've no idea about that. You'd better ask someone else. 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 I've no idea about that. That's not something I know much about. You'd better ask someone else.
Do you have any idea who tipped off the police to raid your mansion, Mr. Manchios?
Of course. It was you. I could even say you Sherlocked me in here.
A good guess, but the wrong one. The fellow who did that was Mr. Pinchetti, your major domo.
What? Santos? But how could he even know? If he's not the murderer himself. The ungrateful swine.
Mr. Pinchetti, a pleasure to meet you. I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm... You are the major domo of a rich mansion, and you seem Did you know Fabio?
Not personally. He was a frequent guest, and cleaning the mess after his...
Did you hear Basilio Coppello? Did you hear Basilio?
I was being very stealthy, Sherlock, and you threw it all away. Come on, pull yourself together.
Did you hear Basilio?
In the police. Let's pretend to be cops, eh? We can just stand around and look confused.
Good day. Your ticket, please, if you want me to help you.
I'd like to check the evidence from this case.
And who are you?
Oswald sent me. I'm a consulting detective. A heavily perfumed handkerchief with the initials KM in the corner. It's a miracle this ruby hasn't tempted anyone. All the keys of the mansion on one golden ring. A handcrafted charm that contains hair and nail clippings. Her key to the altar room. That's not for bedtime reading. The book describes a ritual similar to the one performed in the altar room. Not the time for privacy. Werner's personal sketchbook. An emergency kit for boredom. Thank you, officer. So the police found a letter from Fabio in your pocket.
I cannot tell if it was truly in my pocket at all. Perhaps it was placed there later.
Well, that is one hypothesis. If it were true, then how did it get there?
No clue. But this night has been rather eccentric. Such a detail could have easily eluded me.
Indeed. Do you recall reading it?
I can't remember that either. But I tend to respect privacy. Reading others' personal notes...
I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm helping Constable Oswald. You are Matista Fabio. Please accept my condolences for your friend. I'm just here to ask questions and find Fabio's murderer. Fabio and yourself were slaves, am I correct? You have a similar branding on your body.
Yes. It was...
How did you escape?
Something happened. One night the master fell down the stairs. I made...
The bruises on your neck are not self-inflicted.
I've nothing to add. I don't know what to say. I've nothing to say.
This book, The Power of Love, Blood and Mandrake, what do you hope to achieve?
To learn more about the invisible strengths that govern us. Occultism is real.
This is the letter the police found in Mr. Vogel's pocket. Fabio wrote it. Do you know anything about it?
I don't. Although I can feel
Do you practice occult rituals?
For protection? For fortune?
Please let me out.
I recognize the key from the altar room among these. Mr. Manchios says that you begged him to be included in the heritage. Isn't that a little extreme, even for a major domo?
He's not only my employer, he's my uncle. And I'm his next of kin. The only one. Mr. Manchios flatly refuses to pay a family member. All I have to do is repay his so-called love, cleaning up the filth.
I've read the letter about your will. A harsh method of ridiculing Santa.
You'd better ask someone else.
Do you recognize this book? Could Matista have borrowed it from your library?
She didn't ask me. How ungrateful.
The things described in the book were inspiration for the rituals you perform?
That's not something I know much about.
I've read this letter from Fabio. It had no addressee, but it was found in Mr. Vogel's pocket.
Werner? Strange. I didn't think the two of them corresponded.
I'm sure there is some explanation. Would you care to read it?
Call me superstitious, but I don't care to read a letter from a dead man.
There is undeniable evidence that you were the original recipient of this letter.
What are you talking about? Is it addressed to me?
Your protégé wanted a fresh start, it seems. This is sufficient to charge you.
Me? Hurt my star? Are you insane that you would accuse me of such a thing?
He did not consider himself as yours. Since you deny everything, let's move on. Do you have any idea as to how the letter could have ended up in Mr. Vogel's pocket?
You were the detective. Perhaps he took it from Fabio. Werner was a little high.
I have reason to believe that the intended recipient of the incriminating letter may have been Kurt. Could Fabio have written this letter to Kurt Manchios?
Oh. That could be. I never thought Mr. Manchios could make Fabio that angry, though.
What do you mean?
Well, Fabio wanted to disassociate from Mr. Manchios. Clients who are in love are both a blessing and a curse.
But Fabio was here tonight.
Money. In our line of work, we can't afford to turn down clients who pay as well as Kurt.
This letter proves nothing. Fabio wrote it to Mr. Manchios. It's time to free Mr. Vogel.
Do you really think I'm that naive? I need proof, not words from his friend.
Very well. Mr. Pinchetti told me that Mr. Manchios was lavishing Fabio with expensive and eccentric gifts. The letter mentions rich rewards and attempts to buy Fabio with them. It was written to Mr. Manchios. Who else was showering Fabio with luxuries to buy him? It doesn't fit Mr. Vogel's character.
Look here. We had a deal. Give me the murderer and then take you... continue our investigation while I look for the papers.
The murder of Fabio did not have a ritual purpose, Mr. Manchios. It was staged. We can very often deduce someone's life by their shoes or their fingernails. You are a meticulous person, but this murder... You're at the twilight of your life. You have no partner, you have no children. You had feelings, however, for one man. That was Fabio. You loved him. That is, you wished to own him with money and gifts. But he was also a free mind, was he not? He turned his back on you. Quite unjust. Love, so cruel and painful, and Fabio, with his words and deeds, made you feel the more wretched. So you killed him.
You must surely perceive that my sensitive nature wouldn't allow me to hurt anyone.
You staged the murder as a satanic ritual. It was easy for you, since you were the one who wrote the scenarios for the parties. It was your way of avoiding suspicion. A respectable man in his 60s,
Early 60s.
who hosts the cream of Cordona's society, cannot possibly be a murderer. But the guests who behave like animals in his mansion, of course, one of them could have killed Fabio.
I did oversee a few of the rituals, but I did not stage Fabio's death.
The young performer played with your emotions. That was painful to realize. You spent so much time and effort to be with Fabio.
I can't believe you dared to accuse me.
I have a name for you. Kurt Manchios.
Is that so? The Master of the Sabbath?
The man himself. Mr. Manchios couldn't stand to lose control over his lover. A deadly revenge that deserves a proper sentence. I have all the evidence to charge him.
A degenerate and a murderer. I'll make a name thanks to that for sure. As for my part, not everything was in place. Perhaps some documents were transferred somewhere else, but I couldn't find a trace of them. Then I remembered. The discarded document drawers where we put the lost papers or the badly labelled ones. Including the crime scene report of Violet Holmes's case. Everything I've found is on the desk here. Take it.
Your persistence has saved me.
Yeah, well, we had a deal after all. Your friend is...
Garden. There's a garden behind our manor. How could I forget? That's where it all happened, where it all went wrong.
Sherry, it looks like you've almost found what you wanted.